睇先啊，stream 緊。我而家好鬼應景，因為我喺間房度都凍到要着羽絨褸。點解咁凍嘅？個冷氣明明即係前排個冷氣明明係校到20幾度就冇事，而家又好凍。你死人中央冷氣，梗係校唔到我想要嗰個溫度。
M'amène un bon galon de caribou, puis on devient amis. Sinon, mon petit gars, tu sors avant que je te sorte. C'est vrai, le jeune, que tu te promènes quasiment en bobette. Une bonne police, ça ne ferait pas de tort. Mais je vais te dire une chose, dans ton coin de pays comme par ici, on n'a rien sans rien. Et où, mon caribou?
咁睇翻佢個 store page 咧，就係1970年嚟嘅，即係其實都未離開冷戰啦。咁就可能咩啊？斯大林死咗啊？
Ouais, t'as pas mieux à faire.
我唔知嗰陣發生咩事。我亦都唔知應唔應該睇攻略嘅而家。
There, Carl had fed his mind, but had forgotten the harsh reality that his body also needed nourishment, especially in the dead of winter.
明就佢嚿嘢。嗰啲 loading screen 好鬼生硬啊！
The Polaroid, Carl's long-standing and faithful ally, had seen its share of husbands caught red-handed cheating. There's always something out there waiting to be snapped away. With a homemade shooting range such as this, it wasn't hard to imagine a stray bullet ending its course inside the flesh of an unsuspecting passerby. Granted, Carl thought, there wasn't much in the way of passersby around here. With a homemade shooting range such as this, it wasn't hard to imagine a stray bullet ending its course inside the flesh of an unsuspecting passerby. Granted, Carl thought, there wasn't much in the way of passersby around here.
你唔係應該放喺座山嘅前面嘅呢啲 shooting range？開到嘅 cigarette 有咩用？ cigarette 可能係加 concentration 咯，因為有啲木桶喺下面。
An axe, not too shabby. Carl felt he needed to protect himself.
Beer bottle.
That truck had obviously seen its share of gravel roads. Carl wasn't a mechanic, but he could easily tell that only the most heartfelt prayer would bring this old beater back from its slumber. With that cold, however, it was more likely that it would wait until next spring to wake up. Carl shivered as he saw the emblem, the Patriot flag used during the 1837 rebellion and which had resurfaced in 1970s Quebec, flown proudly by the FLQ terrorist groups. This flag meant bombs, kidnappings, threats in the papers. It was a sign of rebellion.
Okay. 唔識美國歷史。使唔使全部都影咧？隔離啲腳印係紅嚟嘅喎，狗定係紅？隔離啲腳印啊！
The place looked more like a pigsty than a house. A heavy stench of curdled milk, cheap alcohol, and boiled cauliflower filled the air.
Start fire.
Back then, in Africa and elsewhere, people were ready to take up arms to stand against the yoke of English imperialism. In Montreal, mailboxes were blown up, abductions were carried out, and violent manifestos were distributed to media outlets. But around here, in the great northernmost, all a man could do is curse out loud against a faraway evil and pray for the revolution to arise. That man, by any reckoning, was from that very stock.
I just先發現係冇跳躍呢個掣。Alright.
At Jean Blouin. Seems like that pig had a name after all.
Okay. Save. Screenshot.已經叫佢做 pig 啦，因為佢係啲恐怖分子。
Rock music invaded the minds of men even in the remotest of places. The man didn't own a turntable though, so there's that going for him.
Turntable 係咩 ？Turntable。turntable 係留聲機。 我嘅做法差唔多，我都係用晒全部啲貨先開始洗，真係唔好意思。
You had to be out of your mind to cook up white whiskey at home. The all-surrounding stench of alcohol alone was probably enough to gas a man to death. You had to be out of your mind to cook up white whiskey at home. The all-surrounding stench of alcohol alone was probably enough to gas a man to death.
但係我又可以用嚟整。
You had to be out of your mind to cook up white whiskey at home. The all-surrounding stench of alcohol alone was probably enough to gas a man to death. Carl knew right away that the owner of this place wasn't a copper collector. No, this was a junkman's base of operations. The guy definitely seemed like quite the expert in scavenging scrap metal, with or without permission, surely. In the right hands, red metal could sell like hotcakes.
有咩用啊？學爬整電線。
The rag reeked of fermented vomit. Carl wondered how one could bear to live in such gross and horrid conditions.
Hawaiian coffee.
Carl now knew how to quench the drunkard's thirst.
Finish up. 我驚有人突然返嚟，跟住要開槍。你喺室外可以跳起，喺室內就唔可以跳起，玩濕。
Carl felt that it was mission accomplished, with the wicked nectar in his hands. Garbage trucks rarely made a stop in the area. Thankfully, the lake served as a pretty good backup dump for those times when the bins started overflowing.
落水會死㗎，呢個天氣。用正常人嘅常識，我決定唔落。雖然喺遊戲探索嘅角度，我應該落。我應該可以返去，你返去Osea 嗰度啦，又或者去咗 Lamoth 先。 呢啲火係咪唔會熄嘅？我哋想知。佢熄咗咪好大鑊？
Sometimes, and especially around here, people are so possessive with their land, as a dog is with hydrants.
乜佢哋啲名咁奇怪？唔係法國名嚟嘅嗰啲，理解唔到。破壞公物啊喂！呢啲唔係公物咁滯，係私人財產嚟嘅。上面嗰架咩要咁靜？望落去有啲似坦克。唔使錢都入到去。原來個音樂會改咗，好驚。
The man seemed petrified in ice. What Carl saw terrified him, and he didn't know if it was the fear or the cold that was responsible for his hair standing on end all over his body. The poor man, before being frozen solid, seemed to be defending the entrance to his cabin. But from what? The week of October 5th, thought Carl. That was this week. The plug should have been here by now.
有冇用？恐怖嘅音樂。咩嘅呢啲？
The very first steps of man on the moon were made more than a year ago. The event had surely captivated the mechanic's mind for him to still keep this around. To all appearances, Carl concluded, the owner of the place had moved more essentials from his house inside the garage. Peculiar man indeed.
係咪可以望到相？做乜嘢啊？點解有單車相？
Carl had a hunch that there had got to be a plan somewhere that could help him put this thing back together. Carl wondered how long he would have to endure this skin-stinging cold. Nice cattyome. They say it's supposed to soothe the soul. But with this powerful gale that seemingly never sleeps, it was far more likely to get on anyone's nerves. The milk was sorted by color, from the whitest to the greenest, or in other words, from the friendliest to the sourest. Perhaps someone was expecting an important call. In any case, that person's in for a long wait. Carl already noticed that telephone services weren't provided in this area.
有冇地方 save？ 有。
Carl deducted this was a map of the area. Were those pins pointing to places of interest?
Pin? Alright.
Carl deducted this was a map of the area. Were those pins pointing to places of interest? Roswell, Atamipek, Same story. Large deserts conducive to extravagant follies. The man has a passion for intergalactic things. Back then, people were obviously scared of the Russian atomic bomb, but an invasion by extraterrestrials was a legit fear as well. Seems like the mechanic had made his choice. Weird stuff. Kind of a crossing between a colander and a hairdryer. What was it for? To play telepath? To protect against nuclear waves?
真係有第二個 ski。
If some daring person could manage to get their hands on the missing parts, Carl was willing to bet that the craft would have taken flight.
對盒個擺位係做咩？
These scribblings were undoubtedly the mark of a tormented mind. Something wasn't right in the poor mechanic's head.
我可以走啦。個問題係嗰個人好明顯係凍死咗。所以係真係有啲超自然嘅威脅喺呢個地方。
Carl hadn't lived up to his good finder reputation. He still hadn't found any of the wealth contained in Lamotte's lands.
向咩方向？有個島喺嗰個方向，而家睇唔到咯。
What was a motorless car? The mechanic sure had an odd way to go about repairing things. Well, this truck's not going anywhere. Where were the amputated parts? Carl grinned as he pictured a Frankenstein-esque car lying around somewhere made of parts from a dozen different vehicles. By following the plan, Carl was led to believe that the snowmobile's parts had to be scattered about in the vicinity.
Traps。做乜嘢？你抌啲木落街，落個湖度啊！我一直都話冇人嘅地方係最恐怖，我哋就無啦啦有個死咗嘅人喺度。有山洞喺嗰度，我 mark 咗啦，mark 咗啲嘢。唔知有啲咩咧？我有3個地方。
Fédicte mon caribou pour revenir demain. Ah, quand on cherche, on trouve. Parce que je t'aime bien, Astor, je vais te dire quelque chose. Tu fais bien de prendre ma pénis. Parce que par là-bas, tu vas rencontrer le vrai froid. Un froid qui glace comme t'en as jamais connu dans ta vie.
我見到呢一個人已經好開心。要我 turn tab 噶嘛，要我 turn F4 噶嘛，因為佢冇 exit game 呢個 option。